Keep remembering that. Thank you. Welcome. Happy Sunday morning to everybody. And I'm so happy to introduce the guest artist today. He's my friend and wonderful singer and was a pal of Doris Day, as you all know, and Actors for Animals and all of that wonderful stuff. But best of all, he's my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Scott Dreier.
Fairy tales can come true, it can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall apart at the seams, and life gets more exciting with each passing day, and love is either in your heart or on its way. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young, so young at heart? For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, think of all you'll derive out of being alive. And here is the best part: you have a head start if you are among the very young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, think of all you'll derive out of being alive. And here is the best part: you have a head start if you are among the very young at heart.
Please welcome to the Beamer, Reverend Dr. Keith Cox.
Good morning, everyone. Who in the room feels young at heart? Who in the room feels young? Yeah. All right, now, those of you that didn't raise your hand, take a deep breath. Let's support the others, all right? Now, who in the room feels young? Yes! You got weaker on that moment, okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have Scott Dreier in the house today. Pleasure to have him here. Some wonderful classics for all of you, so I'm sure you'll be happy to hear those as I am. He's been rehearsing, it's quite beautiful. Also, we have today back with us on percussion, Guy Azoulay. Pete Orlansky on bass. And the one and only Andy Belling here on percussion and co-music director. So welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living, Los Angeles, and happy September 8th. How's everybody doing today? Good, me too. What a joy and pleasure it is to come together this morning and be in community. As a community, we've been together. Yep, you too. Cupid.
Sorry, I have a slight cough.
It's okay. I think we have some Hall's mentholyptus in the back, if you like. It's been a staple here in the community for 30 years in October. Good lead-in, right? So the beat that I have behind me usually is a little more of a rap nature, but we're gonna go into more of a canine nature today. So glad we're all here. As you can tell, it's quite all right because I am speaking on the oneness of life today. So we're gonna get to experience it in a new way, the continuity of expression of life. So let's all take a deep breath. Settling into being together. We are a spiritual-based community that has been together for almost 30 years. We come together on Sunday mornings to honor the oneness of life, that continuity of life that exists by means of life itself through each and every one of us. We practice primarily here the philosophies and writings of Dr. Ernest Holmes, who is the creator of a study known as the science of mind, which is a philosophy and a faith and a way of life that looks at life from the perspective that there's only one thing ever taking place, that's life or God or mind, and that we both experience and express that spiritual truth through our thoughts and our beliefs and our actions and our reactions and our interactions in life itself. And that transpires because we live in a universe that is governed by spiritual law. And so what goes on in the development of our consciousness manifests itself in form, and we get to look at and feel and experience what's going on in our subconscious mind. And if we don't like what's going on in form, we get to take a deep breath, go within, change our thinking, and change our life. So today we come together to celebrate that as a way of life, to celebrate those that believe the same way or are yearning to believe the same way, whether you're here in person or online. Let's say hi to those Facebook Live and on our live stream, as well as just really enjoy being in the company of each other today. So take a moment and say hello to those of you seated around you. What's up, Pate? I'm fabulous. So continuing on this vein of connection and interconnection, we open our service on Sunday mornings with a ritual called Calling in the Light. And it's led by our practitioner of the day, and she will take us through the verbiage of this particular candle lighting process, as well as our musicians will take us on a musical journey of that, and you're having the opportunity to do some call and response musically with that, while we have an individual coming to light our candles. And then in the end, that practitioner will wrap this entire ritual up with a spiritual mind treatment or affirmative prayer. And so I invite you today, even though you've heard this ritual before, to hear it anew, to open your mind, to experience it anew, and to just simply be open to the energy of life itself. Our practitioner is one of our staff ministers here at the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles, Reverend Lenore Edney. I'd like to welcome you to the Bema, Reverend Lenore. And our illuminator today is Dennis Goodine, one of our fantastic members and a student on his pathway to becoming a practitioner. And our musicians will take you along. Welcome.
Good morning. Beautiful morning, too. Today we perform this ceremony to promote the universal consciousness of life, which acknowledges that all peoples, all faiths, all sentient beings come from the one great universal presence, which we call spirit. And the purpose of this ritual is to draw into our gathering this morning a conscious awareness of our oneness and the qualities we possess as complete expressions of the divine. These qualities include peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, and wisdom. As we feel the vibration shift during this experience, may we come to be ever more aware of the light of life that exists in and as all expressions of life. And this includes you and me. The quality of the divine we are using today is life. Here at the Center for Spiritual Living, Los Angeles, we celebrate the uniqueness of spirit that is fully expressing itself as each one of us. So the acronym we are using for life is Let Individuality Find Expression. And as Dennis lights the first candle, or all the candles, the first letter, the first candle is for L. And the second candle is for I. The third candle is for F. And the fourth candle is for E. Life. Let individuality find expression. I think Spirit demands that of us. How can we not? So I invite you to think in your mind what it is about you that makes you the individual you are. And now we'll move to the healing candle. As Dennis lights the fifth and final candle, that which is known as the healing candle, we ask that you take a moment and think of anyone you would silently like to put into the light of the healing flame to experience the eternal and everlasting love of the divine.
I am love.
I am love.
I am peace.
I am peace.
In my heart.
In my heart.
I am free.
I am free.
I am spirit.
I am spirit.
I am soul.
I am soul.
All together.
All together.
We are whole.
We are whole. Calling in the light. Calling in the light. Calling in the light of love. Calling in the light. Calling in the light. Calling in the light of love.
And so it is. And so it is.
And so it is. And as I say these words, I invite you to take them in. Here we are gathered one more time in the presence, always, always in the presence. Sitting smack dab right in the middle of that which is the divine. We are it, and that's the joy. That's the whole meaning of this thing called life. In celebration of this life, today, let's celebrate ourselves. And in celebration of ourselves, we can easily express that which is ours to express. And collectively, this community is blessed, as each of us is one aspect of this community. We are in this whole sense community, that which is love. And we celebrate that about ourselves and about each other. That's why we're here. Remembering once again what it is that we are: spirit in animation. We are the conduit of spirit's expression. And as we step forward this day, we do so in that way that is the celebration that only we get to be ourselves, uniquely expressing that which is life, love, peace, joy, wisdom, all of these things. We are grateful for this community. We are grateful for all the musicians, for the gifts they share. We are grateful for everyone it took to get this set up this morning. We are grateful for Dr. Keith. We are grateful, period, for the breathing in and the breathing out this life. With these words said, we just allow ourselves to let it be. And together we say, and so it is.
Thank you, Reverend Lenoir.
It's a comedy routine.
She said it was just a comedy routine, but I didn't find that to be truth there. I thought it was quite beautiful and eloquent. Thank you so much. And so come on up, Scott. So share with our community a little bit about this song that you're about to sing, as you were sharing with me earlier today.
Well, it's spiritual, and it's been recorded by many, many artists. My connection to it is the great late Miss Doris Day recorded it for a movie called Love Me or Leave Me, but it's been sung for decades.
Great, so take it away.
There's an old superstition way down south. Everybody believes that trouble won't stay if you shake it away. When they hold a revival way down south, everybody with care and trouble that day tries to shake it away. Shaking the blues away, unhappy news away. If you are blue, it's easy to shake off your cares and troubles. Telling the blues to go, they may refuse to go, but as a rule they'll go if you shake them away. Do like those voodoos do, listen to a voodoo melody. They shake their bodies so to and fro. With every shake, a lucky break, proving that there's a way to chase your cares away. If you would lose those weary blues, shake them away. Shaking the blues away, unhappy news away. If you are blue, it's easy to shake off your cares and troubles. Telling the blues to go, they may refuse to go, but as a rule they'll go if you shake them away. Do like those voodoos do, listen to a voodoo melody. They shake their bodies so to and fro. With every shake, a lucky break, proving that there's a way to chase those cares away. If you would lose those weary blues, shake them away. If you would lose those weary blues, shake them away.
Yes. Scott Dreier, ladies and gentlemen. No blues there, huh? I love how we attract a really shy, low-key, unassuming musicians and group of people here. Well, there's no mistaking that that's the perfect song to move into my message today, which I'm going to go on record that it might be a bit heady, so prepare yourself, and I'm going to read some to you today. Not heady in that I make sure, like I've been told before, I make your head hurt, which that part I'm okay with, but usually that's done because of, anyway. So be open, please, to some of the stuff I'm going to read for you today, because I think it's appropriate for where we're at, both in the evolutionary process of my having built on the different types of love over the last few weeks, about shaking your blues away and opening our minds to begin to see life from a new perspective. I'm going to begin by reading a tweet that was quite controversial this week. The Bahamas, Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas may all be in our prayers, now. Millions of us seeing Dorian turn away from land is not a wacky idea. It is a creative use of the power of the mind. 2 minutes of prayer, visualization, meditation for those in the way of the storm. Now, if you're unfamiliar with that tweet, it was posted by a female presidential candidate by the name of Marianne Williamson. Personally, I love the tweet, and I loved the controversy that created it to follow it, for a couple of reasons. One is because it's exactly what we teach here at the Center for Spiritual Living Los Angeles. Not necessarily that through our thinking we can change the conditions, that we can change the trajectory of a hurricane, but that we do have the capacity and the ability to change our mindset around all that's transpiring in the world and how we react to that. And the second part of that tweet that I love, not of the 2 points, but that she wrote that through prayer, visualization, and meditation, we can send that energy to affect those that are in the pathway of the storm. Now, the other part, do you guys all like that part? Yeah, hopefully you stopped and did that for 2 minutes, or if not, let's all agree to do that at some point, not just in that storm, but in life itself. But the other part of this tweet that I loved was it got the conversation started in our country by a female president around using the principles of the teachings of the science of mind. And as much as it wasn't labeled that way, that is indeed what was being spoken about. And of course, she was called wacky. She was called dumb. She was called nuts, all of the stuff. But however, the conversation has begun. She has chosen to be authentic, to live her true self to the highest possible, to actually do what she did in her writing, which was to not let fear of being who she is be a reason to not express her light. The writing that she did that Nelson Mandela says about our deepest fear is not that we're powerful or blah, blah, blah. You guys know that, right? So she stood into that power and did that. Now, what it reminded me of was years ago at one of our teen camps in Malibu, a storm was brewing. In many ways, a storm was brewing, but a storm was brewing in the sky. And we saw rain coming our way, and we all decided that we didn't want to get rained on. So we went out and stood on the edge of the cliff and rubbed our hands together and sent energy out to the clouds to move them away, and we moved them away. We were so very, very proud of ourselves that we had not only accomplished this in our mind, but we boasted about it and told one of our leaders, Dr. Candace Beckett, around it. And she goes, you must be, and I'm going to paraphrase what she said. She goes, you must be very, very proud of yourself. We said, we are. And she goes, good, but I just have one tip for you. I'm like, what is that? She goes, don't F with Mother Nature. All right? So what she was telling us is to mess with our own mind, if you will, to use our own mind, but not to attempt to control the conditions of the evolutionary process of life itself. That's really what she was telling us. Now, In essence, Marianne Williamson wasn't telling us to do that either. What she was really telling us was to get in tune with our mind and align it in a way that there are healing qualities to be sent out to those who would be affected by nature in a way that could possibly impact their life in a very negative, unhealthy, non-life affirming way. And we've seen as a result of what has transpired by Dorian that many have indeed experienced pain and loss and suffering and tragedy as a result of that particular event transpiring on our planet. What she was speaking to, and what I want to speak to today, is a conscious awakening to living in oneness. She spoke to us and encouraged us to pray and to meditate and to visualize a different outcome because she understands that we are interconnected at the level of mind. And this philosophy, this faith, this way of life known as the science of mind, we are taught that there's only one mind. One. Now that's a big frickin' idea when you think about it. But yet we each have the capacity and the ability to broaden our understanding to that in a new way. To move in consciousness in a way to go, all right, that makes sense to me today in a new way. It makes sense to all of us in the room that we have the capacity to do that for those potentially affected by the storm or anything, correct? Yeah, because you're all students of this teaching. You all know that somehow, some way in your life, you have had an experience that is reflective of the belief that there's only one thing taking place. Now, also in our philosophy and our faith and our way of life, it's not only just that there's one activity taking place, one mind that exists, it's also that there's only one activity ever taking place, the activity of the divine or the activity of God. And it goes on to say, and there's only one God. One. And as I often say, and I said in this room on Tuesday at a memorial service, that really enhanced for a lot of people an understanding of death is that it matters not what we call that power. Matters the name, doesn't matter the name at all, but it matters greatly that we call it. Because in so doing, we're stepping into an awareness and an acceptance and an understanding of the thing itself. And in so doing, we're then manifesting and creating an experience of life that is reflecting the very thing itself. Now, those are all very basic, fundamental components of this teaching. But today I want us to take it up a notch and really start to waken our minds to, all right, yes, it's true, but how do we live in oneness? How do we live from the perspective of knowing that we are interconnected, that you and I are the same? Well, oneness is defined as the fact or state of being that's unified or whole. That the fact of state of being kind of one in a number. Now, living in oneness in itself is the highest form of self-realization. Now, take that in for a second. It's the highest form of self-realization, beyond enlightenment or higher consciousness. Jian Kumar writes, living in oneness is in itself the highest form, as I said, of realization beyond any enlightenment or highest consciousness. It's indeed living as the Christ consciousness. Now, does anyone find that blasphemous or hard to wrap your head around, that you have the ability to live as the consciousness of Christ? Now, we're not talking about Jesus, the dude. We're talking about the energy, the consciousness, the purity that the dude expressed through himself as he walked on this planet doing the deeds that he did that were transcendent of what most people thought were possible. It's really the same thing what Marianne Williamson is telling us to do. It's the same thing that the Buddha has told us to do. Allah tells us to do that. Ernest Holmes tells us to do it. We're all told that our responsibility as we become awakened spiritually on this planet, finding personal self-empowerment, is to raise to a higher vibrational frequency and consciousness at the highest possible for us at the time, and then to raise higher and higher and higher and higher. And we're being told here that the highest vibrational consciousness possible is living in oneness. It's really going beyond even living in oneness, and it's living as oneness. As oneness. What do you think it's easy to do? Sometimes. sometimes not. Who in the room has had a moment of where you knew you were the Christ? Not the dude being nailed to the cross, but that space and mind of you're so deeply aware of your connectedness to all that exists that there's nothing but pure light moving through your life. Well, I've had time and time and time of experiences of that, and I could tell you what those are, but I don't want to take time up this morning to do that. I want us to really look at how do we do this. In a great article written, Calm Down, Mind, Living in Oneness, this is written: the ones among you who have been privy to spiritual teachings would be very familiar with terms like oneness, non-duality, emptiness, and nothingness, used by some teachers to point to the sense that one has in the state of wholeness. These terms can be quite flabbergasting to someone who has had no real perspective on what they imply, and can cause a lot of fear when one comes to an extraordinary imagination about all this. Of course, the mind prefers positive terms like fullness, oneness, fulfillment, wholeness, and balance, compared to seemingly negative terms like emptiness, nothingness. I, the person who wrote this says, I personally don't use terms like emptiness or nothingness because they tend to create far worse imaginations. However, there's a very good reason why a lot of teachers use the term nothingness to point to the state of balance. Because in this state, there is no feeling of opposition in you. The main term here is feeling. It's not that your mind does not have preferences, likes or dislikes. It's just that there is no force of opposition that you feel in you. This causes you to feel like nothing inside. Though you have thoughts of dislike, you don't become all loving in terms of your thoughts because there's no force or opposition in terms of your feeling. This is the best description I can provide of what it means to live in oneness. What it's saying here is that when we choose to live in oneness, it's not that we don't have opinions. It's not that we don't have likes or dislikes. It's not that we don't have disdain or even maybe hate. It's that we move beyond it. We give it no power. We let it move through us as we continue to rise higher in mind. We continue to approach life of like, yes, I don't like the feeling in this moment. Yes, I don't even like fill in the blank, but I'm not going to give it power. Now, this participant continues to write, there is a huge difference between trying to be all loving in your thinking and feeling, no force of opposition in your being. People who try to be all loving, who's ever tried to do that in here? All of us, right? Really hard to attain, right? Why? Because inherent, you have those likes, dislikes, disdain, negativity, right? Now, people who try to be all loving totally miss the point of this teaching, because they're basically trying to manipulate themselves based on their idea of what the teaching of oneness implies. Dark nature cannot be avoided, as it's a part of your nature as life energy. So you'll always have the dimension of hatred operational in you, and it's best that you stop fighting its presence. The dimension of hatred serves a very useful purpose in allowing you to have likes, dislikes, to have preferences, which are part of your individuality. So let go of trying to be neutral. It doesn't work that way. It's not about being neutral, it's about being natural. Take that in. It's not about being neutral, it's about being natural. It's just that there's no need or necessity for you to feel a force of opposition within you that makes your body feel this sense of suffering or agitation. It's a huge freedom when you're free within in terms of feeling resistance or opposition, and hence can operate naturally without emotional suffering. A simple example, they write. In the state of wholeness, you still have a preference that your nation's soccer team wins the World Cup. And in your mind, there is a thought of disappointment if it loses. Now, for those of you that don't follow soccer, use a beauty pageant, all right? And in your mind, there's a thought of disappointment if it or they loses. It's just that there's no feeling of disappointment in your body. That is why this is called nothingness. And this is how you live oneness in your being. In other words, that's a lot to take in, isn't it? Right, we're going to go deeper too, so keep going. So what it's saying is that, yes, you have the acknowledgement that what's transpiring you don't like, but you don't allow yourself to get into the emotions of that. You transcend the emotions by realizing it's just the law of nature that what is unfolding is just that. It's the law of nature showing up, and that we have the ability to transcend it by living in oneness. Now, we're not saying that you step away from life. It's saying that you actually step into life. You step into it through a greater awareness of using your mind as the power of the divine that it is. You use your mind as an individualized expression of the one mind of God, whose nature is peace, power, beauty, joy, light, life, love, wisdom. And as things show up that feel contrary to that, you acknowledge it, but don't move into the feelings of the opposition. Does that make sense? Good. So, how do we do that? How do we do that? Well, we do that by remembering what Ernest told us years ago, which is there's a power for good in the universe and you can use it. The human mind needs and must have a direct approach to spirit. It is natural for us to reach out from our ignorance to its enlightenment, from our weakness to its strength, from our darkness to light. What he's telling us is that as these things show up in life, as we're fine-tuning our commitment and covenant to living in oneness, the way to do that is to lean into the power that exists within us, which is the power of life itself, which we process, experience, and express through our minds. And our minds are the very mind that is the one mind. And then we get to do that by showing up with compassion. We get to do that by not letting our emotions fuel us through the darkness of life, through politics of life, through anything that's causing us disorder or discomfort, but to stay present in the presence, which nature is good. Napoleon Hill tells us the way to do that is through self-discipline. Self-discipline begins with the mastery of your thoughts. If you don't control what you think, you can't control what you do. Simply, self-discipline enables you to think first and act afterwards. Is this still true in the context of living in oneness? Yes, it is. Because the only way that we can master, if you will, the state of living in and as oneness is to be clear on what's taking place in our mind. Now, sometimes that's going to be challenging for us. And this week, as I was processing the week and processing this message, I thought, well, what is a great way for me to remember the natural order of oneness that exists in the world? And it's through nature. I think that when we slow down enough, and I've been walking a lot with this new pup, 8 miles a day, walking a lot, it gives me the opportunity to look out and see what is transpiring in the physical world while I'm walking. Well, clearly my body's moving. I've learned that it's best for me to not have headphones in, to literally listen to what's going on in the world around me, to look beyond me to see what's transpiring. Are there other dogs coming at me? Now, what I've also gotten really clear on with my lovely little Sweeney is that her hearing and her nose and her eyesight is far greater than mine. So she sees the dogs or the squirrels or whatever that's coming towards me. But as those squirrels or the dogs are coming towards us, they're emitting an energy, while at the same time, if they're in a tree, that tree is emitting an energy. As well as behind that tree, there's a life force. And within that tree, there's that pulsation of life moves all the way down to the ground and then down deep into the roots. And in the roots, there's also life taking place, and it goes on and on and on. All living things are connected, and I want us to awaken to that in a new way today. So I wanted to read to you in regards to the interconnectedness of life, and all living things are connected, to use the physical nature of life as a reference. This writing that was put together by this teacher and this student. And the guy that wrote this article is named Elio, and the title is How All Living Things Are Connected in an Exam. For the midterm exam of the UCSD SDSU graduate course titled Integrative Microbiology that Doug Bartlett and I teach, we gave students the option of answering this Talmudic open-ended type question. How would you go about defending the statement that all living things are connected to other living things, to an educated lay audience? What examples would you present to illustrate how pervasive this is in the living world? He goes on to say they liked the answers, so they pulled a group of them together in this particular writing. And I'm going to share with you my favorite of the 8 that were posted. If you'd like the link, I'll send you the rest because it's lengthy. And be happy I'm only giving you one, all right? So this particular gentleman, named a student, remember, named Ryan Giuliomete, his answer is all from one. He writes, I reckon the beauty of our class exercise lies at the tail end of the essay question. What examples would you present to illustrate how pervasive this is in the living world? Indeed, it is a living world, at least according to some. Perhaps all living things comprise one biological entity, one large functioning ecosystem, life force, if you will, with planet Earth as skeleton. This has been denied by many. But Lovelock, a scientist and an environmentalist, thought so. Margulis supported it. Heck, maybe John Lennon did too. I am he, as you are me, and we are all together. The song, I Am the Walrus. It really depends on one's definition of life, on what a discrete species or individual is, how you view time, he writes. It is fine if you don't want to believe in the Gaia philosophy, which is what this is based on, but for the sake of this essay, try to entertain it or something similar. Okay, right. So Charles's work suggests that we all come from one common ancestor. And if evolution as we know it is true, then every living thing that was and currently is from the same seed or stock. In a way, it's the same organism. Contained molecules appearing and behaving differently in space and time. Somehow, the prokaryote we likely evolved from is our great, 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 great grandmother. Now he goes on to write, life is connected because it likely comes from the same single prokaryotic origin. Information with function passed down and modified over time. It's all one force, each bit of it interacting with other bits of it to sustain it. You'll notice the tree of life is comprised of many branches, but it's still just one tree, one life. I love the tree of life. How about you guys? I have it on a bracelet. And if I were to ever get a tattoo, that's what it would be enough. Okay, enough about me. He goes on to write, life doesn't die, at least not yet. It falls apart. It's digested. The organic matter is broken down, recycled into remineralized nutrients, dust to dust, and then rearranged by life as it evolves. So as each component individual of a species falls apart, it gets recycled back into the system. It supports itself, regenerates itself, transfers pieces of itself around to other parts of life. Life is connected because the atoms that compose it are under constant rearrangement, shuffling through different components, or between what are living things to other living things. Much of these rearrangements are made possible by microbial regeneration of nutrients. He says, in your mind, look down at planet Earth from a far, far away galaxy using a powerful telescope. What would you see? Perhaps a live organism consisting of many moving parts that function together to produce oxygen, carbon dioxide, and essential nutrients, moving about and constantly modifying, evolving itself. So to be fair, living things may not really be connected to other living things. I believe, he writes, there may be just one living thing, life, with many working components. Now, I loved that writing But what he does for us, and what I encourage you to begin to see anew today, is all these many different facets of life itself and how they're expressed. And we oftentimes want to break them down into a sense of time, and we want to break them down into lives, and we want to break it down into our understanding at the very human level of how we can lean into it, embrace it, and understand it, and experience it, and process it, and use it. And that's good for us at the human level. But remember, as awakened spiritual beings, we don't live life solely at the human level. We are spiritual beings expressing and experiencing our humanity. And as we awaken our humanity to our own spiritual magnificence, we then get to live our life as spiritual beings, using the oneness of life of the basis for how we then engage in life. But for that to take place, you and I must consciously awaken to the evolutionary nature of consciousness. In other words, do what I spoke about earlier, is to use our minds in a way to constantly be evolving to a higher state of mind or a higher state of consciousness. Well, how do we do that? How we do that? We do that by understanding, if you will, a template or what's called a map of consciousness, the journey to awakening. The first step along the way is to live in a state of ego, the personal self, the dream. This is the experience of most humans, thoughts and ego as me. The human story of suffering. Woe is me, why is life happening to me? The second is to awaken to a state of personal consciousness, to be aware of awareness. The journey of awakening begins here. First, awareness that your thoughts and your ego are not you. That's just your mind playing around. And then the third place to move is to love, a consciousness of love, where there's something more to life than just this human stuff transpiring. That's where we have a direct experience of something more than the personal self. It's when we live in an immersion of love and as love, both at the human level and at the spiritual level, the self-givingness of spirit whose desire is to create more of itself out of itself. And the only way that it can do that is through you and through me, which moves us to that fourth stage, which is a stage of pure being, of bliss. That's when we awaken to the I am as pure being itself, profound bliss. But then we have the opportunity to move to a higher state of consciousness, which is one called void or emptiness. It's that transitional stage of cleaning the last attachments to the ego out of the way and to begin to move into that consciousness of Christ itself, which then moves us to the sixth state of consciousness, which is the consciousness of pure consciousness or true oneness. Pure consciousness as itself. No personal self to be conscious of or as. Living universally. It's all pervading. It's simply oneness, period. I am, it's the very I am that we have been seeking and searching for, which then once we hit that state of consciousness, we move to the seventh, which is living awake. It's how being awakened to the highest state of mind possible functions in the daily life for the benefit of all. It's that place, as I spoke about a couple of weeks ago, about when we choose to live in the state of mystical love, of never asking why, never saying why me, never saying this sucks, never fill in the blank. It's that understanding that you're a vital piece of the evolutionary process of the one thing itself, just like the microbes deteriorate into the oneness that they are to come back as nutrients on our very earth itself. It's where we move to a place where the Bible addresses it in those ways that in him we live and move and have our being. Him, it, the thing itself, or the G word, God, if you want to use it. Jesus said that reality is not in the mountain, nor afar off, but within us. So without trying to define, without making any attempt to explain, we just simply make the statement of mind is. It's this place of mind is that we live in oneness when we choose to surrender to the spiritual truth that there's only one. Mind is both universal and individual. It's not only universal and abstract, it is also individual and concrete. The mind which is personified is the same mind which is universal. This is the perception of the Buddha, Jesus, and other great spiritual leaders had. They understood that the universe has to be one in order to be at all. Take that in. That is a massive statement. That the universe has to be one in order to be at all. Jesus saw it when he said in substance, if I cast out devils by Beelzebub, the prince of devils, that is a house divided against itself which cannot stand. And he also said, who hath seen me hath seen the Father. In other words, he had arrived at a perception of oneness. And so today I invite you to open your mind in a new way to the interconnectedness of the only thing there is. It's expressing itself in its completeness and its totality and its wholeness right now by means of you and by means of me. Now, you've heard that before, but hear it again right now. There's only one thing happening, and it's expressing itself in its totality and its completeness and its perfection by means of you and by means of me. We are the same. Olin Ham tells us that by reducing every single thing to oneness simplifies the entire matter of living for spiritual attainment. Make the commitment today, of not only living as, but spreading the message of oneness in life. And this, my dear beloved soul sisters and brothers, is the way to attain peace on earth today. Thank you. Thank you.
Gonna build a mountain from a little hell. Gonna build a mountain, least I hope I will. Gonna build a mountain, gonna build it high. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, I only know I'm gonna try. Gonna build a daydream from a little hope. Gonna push that daydream up that mountain slow. Gonna build a daydream, gonna see it through. Gonna build a mountain and a daydream, gonna make them both come true. Gonna build a heaven from a little hell. Gonna build a heaven, and I know darn well if I build a mountain with a lot of care and take my daydream up the mountain, heaven will be waiting there. Gonna build a heaven from a little hell. Gonna build a heaven, and I know darn well with a fine young son who will take my place. There'll be a son in my heaven on earth with the Lord's good grace. When I build that heaven, as I will someday. Gonna build a new life, throw the old away. Everyone together with all the love we bring. We'll fill tomorrow full of happiness, gonna make the whole world sing. We'll fill tomorrow full of happiness, gonna make the whole world sing. We'll fill tomorrow full of happiness, gonna make the whole world sing.
Scott Dreier, Peter Lansky, and Guy Azule. Thank you, gentlemen.